You've given everything, your time, your energy, your heart laid bare for people who promised to cherish it. Yet here you are, feeling emptier than when you started. Your generosity met with indifference, your vulnerability weaponized against you, your love treated like a subscription service they can cancel without notice. But what if I told you this isn't random? What if the pain you keep experiencing follows a pattern so ancient, so deeply rooted in human psychology, that philosophers have been warning about it for thousands of years? Marcus Aurelius wrote, "How much trouble he avoids who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does. But we do look, we invest, we hope, and we suffer. Not because we're weak, but because we haven't learned to recognize the subtle ways toxic people infiltrate our peace." Today we're diving into 7 toxic patterns that destroy your inner tranquility. These aren't obvious red flags. They're sophisticated manipulations that masquerade as normal human behavior. By the end of this video, you'll understand not just how to spot them, but why your mind might be unconsciously attracting them. The philosophy of toxic attraction. Have you ever noticed how certain types of people keep showing up in your life? Different faces, same energy, different names, same drama. You might think it's coincidence, but ancient Stoic philosophers had a different explanation. They believed that we don't just stumble into relationships randomly. We're drawn to what feels familiar, even when familiar means painful. Epictetus taught that we suffer not from events themselves, but from our judgments about those events. And those judgments, they're shaped by patterns we learned long before we understood what we were learning. Think of it this way. If you grew up in chaos, calm might feel boring. If you learned that love comes with conditions, unconditional acceptance might feel suspicious. If you were taught that your worth depends on your usefulness, being valued for who you are might feel undeserved. This is why breaking toxic patterns isn't just about avoiding bad people. It's about understanding why part of you is drawn to them in the first place. Because until you heal what's attracting the toxicity, you'll keep finding new versions of the same pain. The Stoics called this preferred indifference. Things that seem important but ultimately don't determine our happiness. Toxic people want you to believe their approval, their presence, their emotional state should be your primary concern. But philosophy teaches us something revolutionary. Your peace doesn't depend on anyone else's behavior. Let's explore the 7 patterns that most people mistake for normal relationship dynamics, but which philosophy reveals as sophisticated forms of spiritual theft. Pattern 1. The guilt merchant. They speak in whispers of disappointment. After everything I've done for you, I thought you cared about me. You're really going to choose yourself over us? This is emotional manipulation at its most insidious. It doesn't raise its voice because it doesn't need to. Guilt is a silent predator. Aristotle wrote about the golden mean, the virtuous balance between extremes. Healthy relationships exist in this balance. But guilt merchants pull you toward one extreme. Endless self-sacrifice. They make generosity feel mandatory and boundaries feel selfish. Here's what's really happening. They're not asking for your love. They're demanding your compliance. Real love celebrates your growth, even when that growth means saying no. Manipulative love punishes your autonomy and rewards your submission. The ancient Stoics taught that other people's emotions are not your responsibility. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. When someone tries to make their disappointment your emergency, remember this wisdom. Pattern 2. The boundary bulldozer. They don't knock on your emotional door. They walk through it like they own the place. Your phone becomes their hotline. Your schedule becomes their property. Your personal space becomes their playground. And when you finally object, they act wounded. I thought we were close. Why are you being so distant? Seneca wrote extensively about the importance of solitude and self-reflection. He understood that without time alone with our thoughts, we become strangers to ourselves. Boundary bulldozers fear your solitude because they know that in quiet moments, you might realize how much of yourself you've surrendered. They confuse intimacy with invasion. True closeness respects the mystery in another person. It doesn't demand access to every thought, every feeling, every moment. Love that requires you to dissolve your identity isn't love at all. It's absorption. The philosopher Lao Tzu taught that the most powerful thing in the world is water. Not because it's hard, but because it flows around obstacles while maintaining its essential nature. Be like water with boundary violators. Stay fluid, but never lose your essence. Pattern 3, the silent punisher. They don't argue, they don't yell, they simply vanish emotionally. The cold shoulder becomes their weapon of choice. Sarcasm wrapped in smiles. Compliments laced with poison. You're so confident for someone who doesn't really know what they're talking about. This is emotional warfare disguised as peacekeeping. They make you guess what you did wrong, walk on eggshells around their moods, and exhaust yourself trying to decode their cryptic signals of disapproval. The ancient Chinese philosopher Confucius emphasized the importance of clear, honest communication. He believed that when words lose their meaning, people lose their freedom. Silent punishers deliberately make communication unclear because confusion gives them power. They want you to feel unstable while they appear calm. They want you to look reactive while they seem reasonable. But responding to emotional manipulation isn't overreacting. It's having a healthy nervous system. Pattern 4. The professional victim. In their story, you're always the villain. They hurt others, but somehow you're the one apologizing. They create chaos, but cry the loudest when consequences arrive. This is weaponized helplessness, the sophisticated art of avoiding responsibility by claiming perpetual innocence. Nietzsche wrote about slave morality, the tendency to find identity in suffering rather than strength. Professional victims have turned their pain into their power source. They don't want to heal because healing would mean losing their primary tool of control. You become their emotional janitor, constantly cleaning up messes they refuse to acknowledge making. They make you feel guilty for having needs, cruel for setting boundaries, and heartless for expecting basic accountability. The Stoic emperor Marcus Aurelius learned to ask himself, is this person's problem actually my problem? Usually the answer was no. Someone else's refusal to grow is not your failure to love them enough. Pattern 5, the identity eraser. You're too sensitive. You always overthink things. Why can't you just be normal? These words land like paper cuts, small enough to ignore, frequent enough to bleed you dry. This is death by 1,000 diminishments. They don't attack your actions, they attack your essence. Your sensitivity becomes a flaw, not a gift. Your deep thinking becomes a problem, not a strength. Your uniqueness becomes something to fix, not celebrate. The ancient Greek concept of know thyself was considered the highest wisdom. Identity erasers want you to unknow yourself. They want you confused about your own nature, because confused people are easier to control. Socrates taught that an unexamined life is not worth living. But some people want you to stop examining your life because in that examination, you might discover they don't belong in it. Pattern 6, the energy vampire. They don't ask for your time, they assume it. They don't appreciate your support, they expect it. Every conversation becomes about them. Every crisis becomes your emergency. They treat your emotional bandwidth like an unlimited resource. Aristotle taught about different types of friendship. The highest form is based on virtue and mutual growth. The lowest is based on utility, what you can get from someone. Energy vampires see relationships as extraction operations. You're not a person to them, you're a resource. They have an uncanny ability to crisis manufacture. Just when you're finding your balance, they create new drama that requires your immediate attention. Your healing threatens their feeding, so they keep you perpetually stressed and available. Pattern 7, the emotional terrorist. They hold your peace of mind hostage with threats of withdrawal, punishment, or abandonment. If you really loved me, you would... Fine, I guess I'll just be alone then. After this, don't expect me to. This is love through intimidation. They make your security conditional on your compliance. Real love says, I want you to be happy, even if that happiness doesn't include me. Toxic love says, your happiness is only acceptable if it serves my needs. The Buddha taught that attachment is the root of suffering. But attachment and love aren't the same thing. Love wants the best for someone. Attachment wants to control someone. Emotional terrorists disguise their attachment as love, but it's really about possession. The path forward understanding these patterns is only the beginning. The real work lies in understanding why part of you has been accepting them. Ancient wisdom teaches us that we can't control others, but we can master ourselves. Start by asking, what would I rather have, peace or their approval? What would I rather be, right or free? What would I rather feel, comfortable familiarity or genuine love? The Stoics taught that the only true prison is the one we build in our own minds. These 7 patterns are the bars of that prison, but you hold the key, you always have. Your peace isn't negotiable. Your dignity isn't optional. Your boundaries aren't suggestions, and your worth isn't up for debate. The ancient philosophers knew something we've forgotten. The quality of your inner life matters more than the quantity of people in your outer life. Better to walk alone in truth than to walk with others in deception. Remember, recognizing these patterns isn't about becoming cold or closed off. It's about becoming wise. It's about learning to love yourself enough to require the same from others. Because the moment you stop accepting what doesn't serve you is the moment you start attracting what does. Your peace is waiting, and it's worth protecting.